Okay, let's talk about Adolescence, the show that is on Netflix, and some of the themes that came out of that. And what I'm going to talk about is my relationship with my son and what I think you can take from that. So, back to Adolescence, the show has thrown up a number of concerning themes. Um, and you may have heard some of the terminology around the manosphere, certainly young men, what they are exposed to, and what they might be exposed to for extended periods of time if people are left alone with their devices, especially if they haven't developed critical thinking to the point where they can't disseminate or differentiate between things that are to be believed and things that aren't. You've got all of that going on. But let me just take a step to the side of that. One of the things that I learnt was that my son speaks a very different language than I do. I'm Generation X. He is Generation Z, or Generation Z, if you prefer. There's a big gap between the two of us, best part of 30 years. The reason why he speaks a different language is because he's grown up in a different generation. And with all the time I've spent with my son, he also spends a lot of time, and did spend a lot of time, he's in his 20s now, around his friends. So you can see how a natural language gets adopted because people around their friends, and language enters their circle and it gets repeated and entrenched and reverberated. So not only is it a different language, but it's a different way of thinking. And every generation is different from the generation before and the generation after. I didn't realize how vast the differences in thinking and language were until I started to spend even more time with my son. And how we spent more time together is we'd go on walks together. And over time, the walks became far more frequent and far longer. We've always gone for walks, but nothing like the last 3 or 4 years, where we catch up on a regular basis. And it's super common for us to go out for a walk at least an hour, or around about an hour. So about the hour mark. So we're not talking 5 or 10 minute walks. Every time we go out, you can measure it by that hour mark. A little bit under, a little bit over. That's the thing. Now, the key is this. During those walks, you can imagine the richness of the conversation that we have. And when I say it's rich, it's not a case of every moment of the walk we're talking about really important things. Sometimes we're just quizzing each other on our knowledge about football. Sometimes we're quizzing each other on our knowledge about music. And other times we're talking about many other things. And when you can imagine, when you're walking for about an hour and you come across something like Adolescence on Netflix and some of the themes in it, my relationship with my son means I can ask him, has he or his friends been challenged by some of the things that I saw in Adolescence? How is it for him? The difference for example, in terms of bullying with me when I went to school in the 80s and yeah, it was the 80s. I'm not going to say the 90s. 90s was university. So let's go with 80s. Is any bullying that went on there was at school during school hours, because there wasn't the devices and because bullies wouldn't phone you up. And so you didn't have the prevalence and just the length of time you could be bullied in any particular day, just as an example. And I do stutter a bit when I talk about this stuff because none of it's palatable. But I ask my son about the challenges that he or others he knows, what they face, because the generation's very different. So I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about the way he talks, the way he thinks, and of course when I say he, it's not just my son, it reflects the generation, the way they talk, the way they think, the challenges that they have, the concerns they have. Do we feel the same about politics? Do we feel the same about the environment? And some of the things, to be fair, and this is a reflection on me, some of the things my son said before we went on these walks, I thought he was being maybe snarky or a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? But yeah, that his language was sort of loaded. Sarcastic is the word I was looking for. But actually, when I got talking to him, I found that that wasn't really the case. That's just the way he speaks about some things. And I should have clicked to that, because when I've done some overseas travel over the last years, especially in Spain, there's a real economy of language there where I suppose what I'm used to is a lot of not just please and thank you, but a lot of words that sort of beef out a sentence to make it sound like it's really softening the sentence. But what I found in Spain is there was a real economy of language where people would just say what needed to be said. And for me, it could come across as being really short or really curt, but it wasn't meant that way. So context is king. So what I found was the context around what my son and his friends were saying, the context was congruent with what I would have expected, but the words that were used were different. And so I was judging the context on the words being used as opposed to, I suppose, the emotion that sat in behind it. So I had to learn that. And that was something I really only clicked to, was spending a lot of time with my son going for these walks. So if I was to wrap this up in a moment, I would say this: go for walks with your son. Now, I'm just using my son as an example. Go for walks with your daughter. Family time, around the dinner table, whatever you want to do. But I want to only talk to walks because the richness of understanding my son and his generation and the challenges they have came from the walks that I had with my son. So the walks with my son was just invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And it's not a task. It's something I really look forward to, and so does he. So we went out for a walk last night, and it was the first walk for gosh, it might be close to a week. So we were both getting itchy. As I say, we usually catch up 2 times a week, if not 3 times a week, to go for walks. I really look forward to them. So I wanted to share that as my experience, because as I say, a lot of the things that came up in the adolescence, we either knew about them and we didn't want to, or we didn't know about them, but either way it can give us a real fright. And it's just so hard to know sometimes what's going on in people's lives. And I found just spending time, and I remember someone gave me this advice really early on. They said, and I'm not judging anyone when I say this, again, everything I'm sharing is just my experience, and if it helps, it's great. But I remember someone challenging me, and this is before I even had kids, saying there's no such thing as quality time, it's all about quantity time. And that always sat with me, and then when I had kids, it resonated even more. It really is about spending time. And I hesitate to say that because I know everybody is under different pressures. They've got different challenges. Some parents are just awesome parents, but they just don't have the time because they're working in other countries. It's not so bad here in New Zealand, but I know, you hear of other countries where people have to work 2 jobs and to make ends meet. I know it happens here in New Zealand. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Let me come back. So I'm just acknowledging that I know a lot of parents have got a lot of challenges. And the walks that I've been doing with my son have been from his late teens onwards. And so there were a lot of factors that came into play that made that possible. Because my son is the youngest, And because when he's then in his late teens, he's taking care of himself. So that frees up a lot of my time. And so we converted that freed up time to going for walks together. So I know a whole lot of factors have to come into play. That you've got the free time, that your son or daughter has got the free time to just share that time together. But if you have, or if you can force it, do it. It's been really, really good for us. So anyway, just something I wanted to share. A little bit different today, but everyone's talking about adolescence, and it's some of the themes in that were really big. All right, take care of yourself. If in doubt, go for a walk. Take care. Bye.